On time. Says showtime. All right, here we are, Corey.
All right, Alan. Nice to see you this fine day.
Nice to see you. Happy Thanksgiving Eve.
Cheers.
Brought to you by Buble.
Buble. This is a cherry flavor.
Because we weren't getting money from the other folks, so we might as well flip.
You know, these seltzer water manufacturers are really missing the boat.
I don't get it. I mean, that's our target market.
We have major listenership. I don't understand the problem.
It doesn't make any sense. And primarily seltzer water drinkers are our listeners.
Yeah, that's true. You know, there's a big opportunity here. We'll have to send a few emails.
Somebody's got to do something. Start tagging people on Twitter and everything.
Yeah, the Twitter.
The Twitter. We gotta just turn to the Twitter and see if we can get people to start sponsoring this. So today, this is a fun topic. We're going to talk about who the recruiter has loyalty to. And I would say that this is primarily, not necessarily, as I was thinking about it this morning, this is not only agency recruiters. This could be internal corporate recruiters as well. And we'll talk about that a little bit, but I'm an agency recruiter. You've worked with agency recruiters. You've worked with internal recruiters. So
Alan, for the uneducated among us,
please.
You want to elaborate on the difference between agency recruiter and corporate?
Sure.
Recruiter?
Agency recruiter is separate from the company. So they don't work for the organization. They work externally with the organization, with the hiring managers or HR groups or talent acquisition or whatever, in finding people for that company. Let's call it Acme Corporation. And they could work with a slew of Acme corporations. They could work with upwards of hundreds of Acme corporations. All of those corporations trying to find people that said recruiter on the agency side is going out and trying to identify for those companies.
Got it. Thank you. We should make a video about that.
We should.
We'll do that and post it.
I think we're going to have that turned out pretty fast, as a matter of fact.
I suspect so.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty quick.
Thanks for clarifying that for me.
Absolutely. Anytime. So in your experience, Corey, as a person who has worked with agency recruiters in the past, when you are working with a recruiter, who do you feel their loyalty is to?
My initial gut reaction to that question has been they're loyal to whoever is paying the money. Now, when I step back from that initial reaction, I think it's maybe more nuanced than that. I think if to look at it from a broad lens, if recruiters were only loyal to those paying the checks or writing the checks, to not care about the candidate side, I think would be super short-sighted. And I've worked with agencies that were more, I don't want to disparage anyone, but a little bit more body shop-like. Versus those who I thought were taking a little bit more care and concern with candidates. And of course, you get better results out of the second. But I think this is a delicate balancing act, it seems to me. How do you look at it? I mean, is there a balancing act there in your mind, what you've experienced?
Very much a balancing act. I've had this conversation with people that I've hired, with people externally. I mean, I've had this conversation over the course of my entire career. You know, where does your loyalty lie? And to your point, a majority of the people that you come across, I would say, especially early in my career, would say that it's to whoever writes the check. But I would always, I don't know that I would always, but I would oftentimes, again, probably later in my career, I don't know, let's call it the last 12 years or so of my career, I would say, but no one's writing a check unless we find the right person for them. And no one's cashing that check or spending that check unless that right person stays.
I think that's a key piece of information. What are the normal terms that are around that unless the person stays?
Sure. So I would say in most cases, now it changes, it fluctuates a little bit depending on the client and depending on their I guess, interests in whatever that guarantee, the typical guarantee, just to answer that, the typical guarantee is 90 days. And the typical 90-day guarantee is pro rata. So basically, on the first day, 1/90th of that guarantee is gone. 30 days, 30/90ths of that guarantee is gone, and so on and so on.
Got it.
So you're only getting reimbursed as a client if you have it in there that you're going to get money back. You're only getting a certain portion of the money back, or there's a backfill for that individual who left within that first 90 days. That's the typical scenario. And we didn't mention this already, but for whoever's here, please, comments, questions, anything that you have, please throw them in there, and we'll answer those questions or share those comments with the group. But no, I think that is certainly a component of it, Corey. I think the guarantee period, or that, I guess, that interest that you have in making sure that that person stays as a recruiter and as a hiring manager is there. But at the end of the day, the recruiter's interest is making sure that that match happens and that match is solid and stays put. At least that's my interest. In what I do for a living, that's my interest. My interest is not solely in the client or solely in the candidate. It really is about that marriage and making sure that that match is a good long-term match.
I see. I think that's, speaking from my own experience, I don't think that's a common perception. If you look at it as a candidate, or if I look at this from a candidate standpoint, not knowing that, I would immediately react to your original question as, well, it's clearly whoever is writing the check, because the part of that that's about the relationship is invisible to me as a candidate, right? So my perception of it would be, if I as a candidate get placed, the check gets written, the relationship's done, and as we've discussed previously, very rarely is there a follow-up from the recruiter side for whatever reason, right? For a bunch of reasons. When I look at it from a hiring manager standpoint, I don't want to make bad hiring calls. So I want that guarantee in place, but that's something that doesn't usually get discussed out in the open very much.
Right.
In your experience, do different companies have different terms? Do they negotiate that period? Let's say it's 6 months, and I just need, if it doesn't work out in that 6 month period, can you help me find another candidate? Do people or do companies vary those terms?
They do. They vary them greatly. We've had clients say they need a 1-year guarantee, and that always causes me a lot of anxiety. 90 days is fine, because I still have, as an agency recruiter, I still have at least a modicum of control over that person, and that relationship is staying, consistent over that 90 days. At least for us, it does. When we get past that 90-day period, my interaction with that person, my ability to, talk to the hiring manager and kind of put any concerns that they have between each other at the forefront and help them navigate those waters, that really kind of goes out the door. I mean, what ability do I have beyond 90 days to talk to both of you and bring you together when you're working with each other 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours a day, and I'm at my office all day long? It's not that simple. So that guarantee is really a huge challenge, because I don't have influence. I don't have ability to help you guys come together and see eye to eye and see things in a way that helps you get along in the way that's going to create that long-term lasting relationship with one another. Does that make sense? Does that answer that question?
Yeah, this is actually super interesting. Now my engineer brain wants to take this down another direction here. Can you speak to some of the things you do in that 90 days to help to nurture the relationship, this new relationship, candidate employer, that's in place? I know you're notorious for bringing overly large quantities of food initially, because you've done that with me.
That usually helps.
It does often help. But in this 90-day window, I mean, what do you do? What kind of things do you see, and do you do to make sure that that relationship really starts out on the right foot. Because I think those first 3 months are critical.
They are critical. Yeah, and thank you, Nick, for the comment. Thank you, David, for your comment as well. I tend to agree with you. I came from a much larger firm before I started my boutique firm, and I think there's a lot of merit to what you're saying, though I don't think it has to be that way. And like Corey said in the beginning, we do have a video that we put together that kind of gets back to why they can both act as boutique firms if they choose to. I think it's a choice that internal employees in that agency have, and the higher ups in that firm have, as to how they want to train and coach and mentor their people in how they interact with their clients and candidates. But back to your question, Corey. So those first 90 days are critical. We have a lot of clients that will structure a 90-day contract to hire, because that 90 days is really critical. I mean, the first, however long they say, is the honeymoon period, where, you have this new employee, everybody's getting along. They seem to be exactly who they were in the interview. And then that honeymoon period ends. Something happens. They recognize that maybe this isn't everything that I thought it was going to be. This company does have warts, and I didn't see the warts during the interview. And the new employee, they also have their idiosyncrasies. There's things about them that I didn't see. They were high energy and super bubbly and cool during the interview, and now suddenly they seem to just kind of have fallen into this mindset of, it's work. What happened to that person that I hired? So the 90-day period is, for us anyway, as a boutique firm, like David described, we're staying very close with that candidate. We're trying to, help them navigate the waters of their new environment, the new leadership, get them connected to other people. If we do have other people there that we've also introduced to the firm, get them connected to those people, and have those individuals help shepherd them through kind of the onboarding process and what the first 90 days look like. And then by the same token, really reaching out to the hiring manager, reaching out to talent acquisition and HR, and saying, how are they doing? Do they have, we've had people start environments, and in 3 weeks, they don't have their laptop. They don't have, they haven't been trained. So it's critical that we stay close to them. They're not reaching out to us telling us that they don't have those things or those tools. But when we reach out to them and find out that they don't, rest assured, we're all over that hiring manager and saying, dude, what's going on? They want to be productive. You hired them specifically so that they could, add value, and they don't even have the tools and resources to make that happen right now.
So in your experience in that scenario, is the hiring manager usually pretty responsive to that? I imagine they would be, right?
Always.
They're pretty, right?
Always. Yes. Yeah. Well, I say always, and I'm going to stick with that. I would say a very high percentage of the time. Again, I think that the cool thing that we have going for us, being a boutique firm, is that we have the ability to reach out to them and help them understand where things might be going wrong, or where things could be improved. We also have the ability. So like I said, when we place multiple people in one environment, we'll be able to tell that next person in there, hey, look, the last person that we put there, it took like 3 weeks for them to get all their equipment, just so you know. So, talk to your hiring manager, talk to your coworkers, talk to your colleagues, learn as much as you can about the environment, about the process once you have your equipment, so that downtime is at least productive time. But again, that first 90 days is critical. And, for us to have any sort of, assurances that they're going to make it to that 90-day period where everybody's seeing everybody's warts and everybody knows exactly who they have, you got to stay close. You have to stay close. And that's where I would say the loyalty is really to both, and hopefully they both have loyalty to us too. Our mission in life is not only, to have loyalty to one or the other of them, but to have that reciprocated. If we found one person that makes it a year, we would like for that person who's there a year to refer other candidates to us, and we'd love for that hiring manager to hire through us again. We'd like that to be, kind of a three-way street.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, when I coach people just starting out, or mentor people that have switched jobs, I always coach in the direction of taking intentional first steps when you first start out a role at a new company. Not everybody does it because, like you said, they easily fall into the okay, I've landed, now it's a job, and I will repeat my patterns in life at this new job. And I generally try to coach at least go in with a 90-day plan, which is common at the director VP level. That's normal and expected. Technical folks aren't usually used to that, but I generally say it anyway. Go in with a 90-day plan. The first 30 days, you're assessing the situation on the ground. You're getting set up. You're going through onboarding. Right? If there isn't a new person onboarding guide, you get to start one and be the person that becomes quickly the go-to resource for other people who are onboarding. Right? So all of these things, new candidates should be paying attention to. But you're the first person I've heard talk about that from the recruiting side, in that you're looking out for the success of that initial onboarding track relationship, which I think makes a ton of sense. I've certainly been in environments where it took a month to get somebody a laptop, right? So you're allowing a new employee to sit on their hands for a month. Doesn't seem like a great idea for the image of the company. So I like the approach of having a really high touch onboarding philosophy.
Yeah, well, and then it, like I was saying earlier, I mean, if it takes a month to get the laptop, and we as the recruiter don't explain that, like if we have that knowledge and we don't share it, shame on us. So I don't care if you come from, a large firm or you come from a boutique firm, when you put people in that environment that it's going to take a long time for them to be onboarded, for them to have all the tools that they need to be productive. You need to share that. And I think that's the other thing where this concept of loyalty comes in. Not every candidate is perfect for a client, even if they have the technical skills. If they're someone who during the reference checking process or during the interviewing process or whatever, we've determined just doesn't seem to be the right fit for that organization, that doesn't mean I'm not loyal to you and I'm not doing my best for you. It just means that I know my client hopefully well enough to know that this would be a mismatch. And again, you can do that in a large firm. You can do that in a boutique firm. Let me post this question from David here. Sounds like that 90-day checkpoint happens with the candidate and the client. Is there a how's it's going check with the client regarding the fit and performance? If you don't get great feedback, what remediation options are there? So absolutely, 100%. I mean, our goal is not to, breathe easy at that 90-day period. When they pass the 90 days, we don't go, oh, thank goodness, they made it. Now we can go cash the check. Our goal is for them to be there for as Reid Hoffman and Ben Casanoka talk about in their book, that tour of duty needs to be completed. We want somebody to be there for the entire length of their tour of duty with that company, or that company's expectation of their tour of duty. So the remediation options are, can we sit down and have a conversation with the candidate and say, look, you're not cutting it yet. Here are the things that you need to do. And we've had those hard conversations. Within the last 2 weeks, we've had those hard conversations where, I know you've got a lot of stuff going on personally, but you just started this job and you need to show up and you need to be there and you need to be present and you need to show that you want to be here if you do. But if you've determined already that you don't want to be there, let me know. Take some time away, go deal with the personal issue, and we'll find someone else for our client. So, and by the same token, on the other side, if they're just not ready for that person to start, and we can call the client and say, look, we put them there because we thought you had critical need and we thought you had something a problem that they were going to solve. It doesn't seem like that's happening right now. Should we pause, and let them go find something different? I haven't had that conversation in a really long time, but I've had it. But no, I think on both sides, the remediation is just getting them to sit down eye to eye and hash through. But we're the intermediary. We're trying to solve that problem and make sure that this was the right time to hire, and it's a good fit for the long term.
Yeah, I like that. I still think you're in the minority for the industry, Alan. But certainly, as speaking from the standpoint of a hiring manager, if I put that hat on, I mean that is to me how success is measured. It is, if you nurture the candidate through that onboarding process enough to, I mean, ultimately your goal is to have someone in there who's capable of delivering, who's a good culture fit, meshes well with the team, doesn't require excessive amounts of oversight. I mean, that is success at the end of the day. And I think having that first 90-day process well understood, I think is really vital to the achievement of that goal. I mean, I've walked in certainly to companies where I remember one extreme case. I don't know if you were around back then. Yeah, it was probably 10 or 20 years ago. And I walked into a company that I had to assemble my own computer out of parts. This was back in the desktop days. Somebody passed out in the bathroom after spending 4 days straight in the office without going home. And didn't take long for me to say, okay, not a fit for me, sayonara. So that first 90 days, I agree, is critical. And I think if that balance is achieved the way you're describing, I think that's a win-win for everybody.
Yep. Yeah, and again, I think I've sat in meetings with people who, again, back to our topic of this loyalty issue, where people will say point blank, you're counting on turnover. As an agency recruiter, as somebody who does this for a living, you're counting on the people that you put to work here calling you back at some point in time and saying, I'm done. I want to go somewhere else now. And I'm sure there are recruiters out there that count on that. I'm sure there are recruiters out there that, bank on that, or maybe even make that part of their practice. I don't subscribe to that. I don't think that's in any way, shape, or form the right way to conduct the business that I'm in. And I wholeheartedly disagreed with that individual. And I said, that is not how we operate. That is not what we're aiming for. I literally have a help desk guy that I put with the state of Arizona 18 years ago. And I know him well. I still stay very closely connected to him. Now, did I think he was going to sit on a help desk for 18 years? Absolutely not. But when I put him there, I envisioned him moving up the ranks, doing what he desired to do. He's doing exactly what he desired to do. Not my cup of tea, certainly not where I would envision myself going. But he loves it. And he wants to be there, and he wants to do that work. I don't put people to work expecting they're going to be there for 18 years, but I certainly put them expecting that they're going to enjoy the time that they're there, and that the employer is going to be happy with the fact that they're there. And that's, again, back to the loyalty. I think that has to be part of what we do as recruiters, is aim for that fit, and not aim for turnover, and not aim for, a revolving door of people. It just seems like that's probably one of the areas where our industry has kind of gotten a little bit off track.
Yeah, I think the perception is substantially different, at least from the interactions that I've had. I don't think to David's, was it David? Yeah, David's point. I don't think it's well understood, the philosophy, the amount of complexity that you're actually dealing with. So I think we should put up the video explanation, and with apologies to David, because it's probably going to look like it's amateur night. But I do think some education here would help, certainly in tech, because the perception is, I think, substantially different from what you're describing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'd love for recruiters to comment on it. I know, our friend Nick. Thanks again for being here, Nick, and joining in the conversation. But I know he'll comment on it, and I believe I know, his commentary is going to be, this is how it works. There's certainly some intricacies and some details that maybe we left out of that doodly that you put together, Corey, as the engineer, because there's no way I could have put that together.
All I do is draw pictures, Alan.
But no, I think that video is going to help people understand that, it's not, ghosting happens. Ghosting sucks. No one likes it on either side of the equation. And this conversation didn't need to morph into ghosting, but there's a reason that it happens. And, maybe, just maybe, if you understand what the reason is, maybe it'll make it a little bit more palatable. I'm not saying it does. It's going to suck no matter what. Just like getting a rejection. When I tell people that, if you applied to a job and you get a rejection, I tell people all the time, you have to count that as a win. And they're like, how would I count a rejection as a win? I'm like, well, you could count it as a loss, and that's your reality, is that you just lost that opportunity. Or you could count it as a win and say, I no longer have to worry about that company. And therefore, I can add 3 or 4 or 5 other companies to my list of targets. But that one is now gone. So I've gained the fact that I no longer have to look at that company. That's your gain. But it's tough. It's a tough thing for people to do, especially when you're in the throes of looking for a new opportunity.
Agree.
So David's comment, I have a handful of recruiters where I have a continuing relationship. They're all based on all the same things that Alan is talking about. I have many more companies where I was just a butt in a seat and a line on a spreadsheet. But they both exist. And our goal, David, mine and Corey's goal, and whoever else wants to join this conversation, is to get rid of the butt in the seat mentality. I'd very much like clients to stop saying I need warm bodies. And I'd very much like to not ever hear a candidate say you're an insignificant recruiter. You're nothing without me as your candidate. So, go ahead and make the money, but you didn't earn it. Both of those things suck. I don't want either of those things anymore. But that's pie in the sky.
Yeah, I think really some education is needed here. Certainly from the candidate standpoint, we don't see the complexity behind the curtain. Certainly just having some of these conversations with you, Alan, and I myself, even though I've been around for a long time, I know now I have a better appreciation for what questions I should be asking when dealing with a recruiting process. So, I've now realized a few things I didn't know going into some of these live sessions, to be honest. So I think the education would be very helpful. Let's put up the diagram and let's continue the dialogue. I think talking through the problem, even the gnarly parts, is what will help to correct some of these perceptions.
Yep. Yeah, and I think it's interesting too, Corey. We talked about it in one of our last sessions, one of our previous sessions. The questions that you would ask a recruiter as a candidate, and how long have you been doing this? Is one of those questions, because then if you're dealing with a rookie, or you're dealing with somebody who's been doing this for a long time, and it doesn't mean as a very senior level person you should walk away from the rookie. By no means does it mean that. You should not 100% walk away from a rookie, just like you should not 100% go with somebody who's been doing it as long as I have. The second question would be, who is your loyalty to? And ask them that question. They may not ever have been asked that question before. They may not know how to answer it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a fair question. Are you in this for me? Are you really trying to help me get that job that you called me about or that I applied to? Or are you only helping that company put a butt in a seat? I think that would tell you a lot and determine whether or not, because there's a lot of us out there, as to David's point, there's a lot of us out there.
Yeah. And I even go further, especially after, having your help understanding what's really happening behind the scenes. I would be asking, okay, how do you do your work? Do you hand my resume off to an account person? Is that account person working with HR? Do you even know who the hiring manager is? If not, red flag right there. Right.
Yep.
So I think we could actually formulate this prescriptively and furnish it to candidates and say, here's the questions I think you should be asking. And here's why the answer, here's why it makes sense, number one. And here is how to interpret the answer, help you navigate that a little bit better. I think that goes a long way to setting the expectation around ghosting. If I say up front, hey, listen, I really don't like to be ghosted. I understand you have these many touch points behind the scenes. Is that true? So make sure you give me feedback regardless. If everybody gets COVID for 2 weeks, and there's no way to get any feedback from the company, I still want feedback from you. So if you have that conversation up front, set the context appropriately, I think that goes a long way to mitigating, or at least making sure that the expectations on both sides are clearly described so that they can be met. And I wouldn't have had that conversation that way before, you and I had sketched out some of these things.
I think that's perfect, man. That is perfect. Is there anything else you can add, Corey the Engineer Berg?
Well, I think this is illuminating for me, certainly, to hear you talk about it. I think that 90-day thing maybe should be the white glove service should be a value add offering for you. But I think we should make it a thing. I mean, this should be a thing. There shouldn't be an exception. It should be a common practice, right?
Yeah.
To ensure that first engagement is a successful one, will make it about the relationship. Why isn't that the standard practice? It should be the practice.
Yep. I agree.
My opinion.
I wholeheartedly agree. And it's, I mean, I think it should be, and I think it is in a lot of cases. Again, I'd love for recruiters to comment on the doodly that we're going to post, just on the process itself of going from a candidate to a client, and what that flow looks like, and then we can definitely talk about post. Okay, now what do you do after that? Are you washing your hands? I had a candidate literally every time I called him during the first 6 months that he was there. I remember it distinctly because the fourth or fifth time I called him, he said, and you could hear him get really quiet. He's like, Alan, why do you keep calling me to check on me? He literally said that. Now he was a brand new developer. Not oftentimes do I have a client say, if you have somebody who's green, I'd like to interview and hire them. But this kid was like just floored. He's like, why do you keep calling me and checking on me? I'm like, dude, I just want to make sure you're happy. Like, this is an investment, in you and in your long-term path. Are you still happy? Yeah, I'm still happy. I'm good. You can stop calling if you want. And I'm like, I'm not gonna, but I appreciate that. Unless you tell me that you definitely don't want me to call, I'm going to keep calling.
Yeah. They're developers, especially, they're not interchangeable carbon units. They are humans. Same on the other side. I think what you just described, this is uplifting the industry, and that's what it should be about.
Yeah. Right on. Well, I'm glad you're in the uplifting with me, brother.
Thank you, Alan. Glad to be here. Let's get that diagram posted. I want to hear how wrong it is.
Me too. See what my recruiter colleagues have to say about it, since it was a joint effort, and we'll see what comes of it. Thanks again, Corey. Good to see you, buddy.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks, everybody, for being here.